Welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the show. It's great to have you, as always, joining us. And I'm excited because today is one of those special, rare episodes on the Cabral Concept. I was fortunate enough to sit down with Aubrey Marcus in Austin, Texas, at his beautiful Onnit Academy, where we went through a lot of deep conversations. And one of the reasons why I wanted to invite Aubrey on the show is because we share a lot of similarities, but we also have many differences. My goal is to bring you some of the best thought leaders out there for people that are really trying to go through this life and figure it out, trying to do their best to not only say, what is going on here on this journey, right? This journey of life, and how can we help our fellow humans on this journey as well. So Aubrey does just that. He puts himself out there, whether it be social media, whether it be his podcast, his books, and he's essentially trying to help people through sharing what he does in his life as essentially experiments and trying to get the most out of his life. It's part of his new book as well, Own the Day, Own Your Life. And I think we share a lot of similarities in that way, where we're always just trying to push the envelope to say, what is really working? What can I take from this experience in order to then allow it to serve others? So we sat down, we went deep into his personal life and relationships. We talked about a car accident just about 2 months before I sat down with him that almost took his life, and he'll share that story with you. We also went into his perspectives on sleep, on nutrition, on the little things that you can do during the day that will give you exponential-based benefits. So this was a really exciting interview for me. I'm looking to do more interviews in the future. And I believe that today's guest, Aubrey Marcus, will be able to share with you direct actionable items that you'll be able to put into your life right away to start to own your own day and own your own life. Enjoy the episode, everyone. Aubrey Marcus, welcome to the show, my friend. It's great to have you here. And I should probably say that it's actually great for me to be visiting in Austin, Texas. I get to come down to your headquarters, and you have such an amazing place here. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, thanks for letting me play a home court game here.
Absolutely. So one of the things, and we're going to get into a lot of your story today, and I want this to be a real transformational based show. And one of the things that I admire about you is that you're not afraid to step out of your comfort zone. So I'd love to start off the show.
I should maybe be a little bit more afraid to step out of my comfort zone, because I do it a little aggressively, actually. But yes, you're right.
Well, one of the things, you just took a solo trip, basically no technology, no anything except maybe a phone for emergency, you were telling me before. I would love to hear a little bit more about that retreat, why you went on it, how it went, and what did you take from that?
Well, how real you want me to get with this story here?
As real as you want to. That's where Mindset and Motivation Mondays are literally about teaching people that there is more to life than what we're currently experiencing right now. So you took a step out of your life. You left during the holidays, your loved ones, a lot of people, your business, and you said, I need to go explore something. What was something that you were exploring?
Well, this is kind of a longer story, because one of the primary things and motivations behind this was that me and my fiance have entered into an open relationship for 5 years now. And that has brought up some of my most challenging elements of my psyche. So insecurities that I've had, needs for validation, needs to feel special, all of these things that are at the very core of our ego get really deeply challenged when you're in an open relationship. And as my fiance fell in love with somebody else, which is totally permitted under the landscape that we've created, it hadn't happened yet. But when it happened, that was a deep reconciliation, because I think a part of me was relying on her to show me that I was special. and that I was the one that she loved the most, which meant that I could love myself the most, right? So it brought a lot of stuff up to the surface for me. And, we did our best to communicate and work through this process and support each other, but it was, naturally a little bit turbulent because of the frequency and depth of and gravity of those emotions that were coming up. So we made a decision that we were going to take some time and space in December. And I also had some other objectives. It was a good time for me to unplug from a variety of other things. But truth be told, the emotional reconciliation element of dealing with being away from her while she was with her boyfriend, that took the dominant position in the trip. Now, Patagonia is gorgeous, and it was a beautiful place to go. And nature is always restorative, and it's a powerful place for me to go to write and to think about what my next book might be. And also I was going through a physical cleanse, which was a little bit harder to do when I was in the mouth of the emotional tiger.
Absolutely.
But nonetheless, as I went through that process, I think one of the things that was really valuable is when Whitney is accessible, and she's my fiance, when she's accessible, I can always reach out to her for some form of validation, which acts as like a crutch. It allows me to validate that she still loves me and then get through with that validation. But this, in isolation, I really had to build that myself. I had to build those practices that could inculcate the self-love and the self-sustainability and actually release my attachment to the outcome. And it took about 8 days. It was like breaking a fever. It took about 8 days out there in the wild, me in the wild and my thoughts in isolation and eating clean food and getting off all the substances that I'd come accustomed to, whether that's nicotine or caffeine or a glass of red wine or anything like that, just totally paring down all of that. And it was just hiking, nature, and isolation. And around day 8, was able to release my attachment to so much of those things that were painful and return to a place of love. And, we ended up reconnecting maybe a week after that. So it was about a 17-day trip. And our relationship, we've been together 7 years, 2 years monogamous, 5 years open. I think finally now we feel like it's in the fruition of what it always could be, where we really love each other in that more deeply unconditional way, where we're just truly happy for each other's happiness. So I know that took this question on a long banana curve of understanding, but that's really the truth. And the truth was, I had a lot of ideas about the cleanse, and I had a lot of ideas about maybe some work, that I could get done when I cleared the space. And a lot of that did happen. But the primary part of that was just reconciling my emotions and being able to return to a state of love.
And so when you were there and you were, again, you're wrestling with your own thoughts, your own feelings, your own emotions, when you felt that lift, what did it feel like inside of your body? Because I know there's a lot of people listening right now, and everyone has their own struggles in life. They're whether it's their health, their body, their transformation, their career. So you were looking to work on your challenges in life right now. What did it feel like? And then what did you want to do next? Like, what was that next thing? Like, okay, because there must have been some feeling of openness or freedom. So how did that next step move forward for you?
It's like there was a small injectable cattle prod somewhere between my sternum and my stomach, my solar plexus.
So not always
right?
the most pleasant feeling.
No, and it had different voltages depending on the thoughts that would go in my head. And these thoughts could be a wide variety of thoughts that would trigger some feeling of jealousy, some feeling of inadequacy, some feeling of insecurity, some feeling of any of these things. And then the voltage on that cattle prod would just ramp up, and it would really tax my nervous system, and really tax my mental capacity to think freely and to think creatively and to be excited. And so that thing being there, when I was able to turn that thing off and feel it extracted, and it was amazingly, amazingly powerful. I mean, just being able to look out at we were at Lago Sarmiento, which is this beautiful lake out there in Chile, and the big mountains behind it, and just feel the wind in my hair and the sound of some sheep in the hills behind me. And
sounds amazing.
The water lapping at the black rocks, and the snow still on the mountain. And it was like, you can look at that, and I looked at that for the first 5 days and I appreciated it. But then, when you release your own internal struggles and turmoil, you can look at it with the proper awe of being truly present, and just the joy of that is what makes it all worth it. It's why we fight through our own shadows and our own difficulties and our own demons. We do that because there is a payoff. People always question, like, why are you doing this? It just sounds like a lot of pain. It's like, yeah, it is. But there's a payoff. And that payoff is just radical, beautiful presence and ability to be free of the emotional tyrant that we can hold in our own brains.
It seems like that's one of the only ways to get to that next level, though, is to go through some type of discomfort, some type of pain.
I don't know another way. Please tell me, tweet me.
I haven't found it either.
Send me a message.
Yeah.
Show me the easy way, because I wish I knew that way.
I mean, and for me too, I can only look back now, about 10 years later after that. I was sick from 17 years old to 27. And it was a long journey to get well. Now, part of that was I didn't meet the right people at the right time. But another part of me says, well, had I would not have gone through the journey. I would not have transformed more than just my body and my health. I wouldn't have transformed my mind. I would have not met all the mentors along the way that would have been able to share with me Ayurvedic medicine, functional medicine, bioregulatory medicine. So my journey would have been stopped short, in my opinion, had I not had to continue to go through that suffering, because I had to continue to look for answers. So for me, anybody out there listening right now, I mean, your struggle can be one of the greatest things eventually that you look back to. But when you're in the moment, I'm sure for yourself as well, you're not like, oh, this is such a blessing. I'm so happy to be struggling right now.
You know what's funny is you can practice that. Like, you can practice the gift of hindsight, because the gift of hindsight is you can recognize how valuable these things are. You can recognize right now, wow, that was really valuable for my life, that I had a 10-year battle with an illness, right? But that's just with the gift of hindsight. But you practice that enough and realize how frequently you're able to do that. And then you're able to have hindsight as foresight, so you're able to know as you're going through it. And some things are easier than others, right? Like, I wouldn't say that I was able to do that very well in Patagonia, but I also got in a pretty gnarly car wreck this year.
I was just going to ask you about that.
And
mention it.
From the moment I woke up in the hospital with my face a smattering of blood and half of it hanging open because it split me from just under my eye all the way through my lip, and I had no responsibility for that. I just, for whatever, inexplicably passed out in the middle of a day after sleeping well, not going out the night before, passed out in the middle of a day and slammed into a guardrail. Like, somehow my brain just had one of those weird turn-off functions. But anyways, I woke up in the hospital and I knew from the moment I was there that, okay, this is a blessing. I just don't know why yet. And so for whatever reason, that thing, I was able to do it. But as I'm kind of rolling around in my sheets in Patagonia, sleepless, worried about, I'm just stuck and it's hell and I'm never getting out. What the hell am I doing? But in hindsight, you're like, yeah, that was perfect. I needed to push myself to that level of discomfort. So I actually shifted and had a different mindset created. So it's interesting because it is something you can practice, give something well, but sometimes you're able to apply it and sometimes you aren't. And what's important is just to not judge yourself for those times where you don't live up to that mentality.
Right. No, and I think that's a great way to put it. I think I would say, and I tell people this, just over the past couple years that I've got there myself now, like meaning that whether it's a practice I'm in, whether it's a hard day, I say, yeah, today was a hard day, but today's today. Tomorrow I'm going to wake up, it's going to be a new day. I'm going to take my experiences from today and be able to move forward and learn. But just like you said, there are certain areas of our life that are more of a trigger that maybe still cause a little bit more emotional stirrup. And it's like, okay, how do we apply all those other lessons? Which for you, I mean, I think, this was a near-death car wreck, right? I mean, This was something where a couple more inches left or right or whatever it might be, you might not have your vision, you might not have your life. And that's a pretty startling thing, but yet you were able to somehow see this as maybe a learning experience. And like, was that immediate for you? Okay, you wake up, you have no idea how you got there, but you're in the hospital. Mm-hmm. So your next thought is what? Like, what's the first worry thought that's going through your head?
Well, the first thought was, and they actually said, who do you want to call? And it was Whitney. And I said, call Whitney. And my first thought, I always get emotional when I think about this, but my first thought was just, I'm sorry. Like, I don't know how this happened, but I'm sorry because our plans have changed. Like, we're not going to be able to go out and have fun and do stuff. You're going to have to take care of me because I'm badly hurt. And I think for me, there's a lot wrapped up in me being an entertainer, a provider, the one who does things and receives love because of what he does. And I think it's hard for me to be in a position of being incapacitated. It's hard for me to be in a position where I'm just really able to receive love and not very effective. I mean, my lip was split open. I can't kiss you, like my body's a wreck. I can't really hug you well, like I can lie there and receive love. And I think that was the I'm sorry was, yes, that was one of the harder parts. But and it's kind of silly because obviously they're not like, you're sorry, like you just got in a car wreck. Right. I'm sorry. Like, what do you mean? Like,
but you felt you couldn't fulfill your role.
I couldn't fulfill my role. I
Yes.
couldn't fulfill my role. And that was one of the deep lessons of that, was that I could be loved even if I didn't fulfill my role, that being loved, and everybody just came and poured love on me, and that I wasn't able to do anything back in return other than just receive with a smile and with my heart open. And that was one of the deep, beautiful lessons of this, was taking me out of that role of, well, I have to do things in order to, receive the love that I get. But I knew early on, I didn't know that lesson was coming, but I did know early on, after I said my tearful apologies to Whitney on the phone, and she was there shortly, like, I knew that this was a blessing and I would learn from it. I just didn't know what, it was just too random and it was too serious. And I think that's the thing also for me. The big stuff I can apply my lessons to a little bit easier. Like, that was a big accident. But, if you caught me today and I like caught my toe on that stool of the bed, that's hanging down, and you're trying to walk and you just catch your toe, I will curse that thing. And go, what? This is I hate this.
Right.
That put me in a bad mood.
Not a lot of lessons to be taken from that.
Lessons to be taken from that. But I'm sure there are.
Right.
But like, we don't do it for the little stuff, because you can just curse and just bear it, but this, I couldn't just curse and bear it. My face is split open.
Right.
Like, I had to apply the higher principles. And so I think that's why it is helpful sometimes to have those deeply challenging things that almost force you and compel you to either have a deep retraction, or like a deep running from it, which is not really healthy, but maybe the way you need to learn, or a deep opening to the higher expression of consciousness and what you're capable of.
And do you think, you have so many roles in your life, and that's one of the things I find most interesting, is that you're head of Onnit, right? So it's nutrition, it's supplementation, it's jujitsu now, like it's everything, right? So you have the whole
yoga,
health and yoga, Black Swan yoga, which, all that's amazing. And you're always expanding. You have a fashion line and you have your book, which we're going to talk about in a moment. So do you feel like you have to change from one person to the other in each of those roles, or can you stay uniquely, Aubrey Marcus?
If I tried to change my roles, I would be exhausted. I would be absolutely exhausted. Like, the mental framework, the mental demand to try and strategically put on a different avatar for each different situation would be so exhausting. So I don't. And that's why, like, I understand that your audience probably hasn't had a lot of discussion about relationship and open relationship, but
this first.
The truth, yeah. And I expected that. 1,080 episodes, right? Like,
that's right.
So if I'm putting on an avatar, I would have steered that talk towards oh yeah, it was good. I got to cleanse from, these certain things, and I got to be in isolation in the value of nature and unplugging to the biorhythm of that, which all happened. But, I've just surrendered my strategy to the point where, like, all right, man, well, you want to ask about Patagonia, I'll tell you the truth. Like, let's go there. Right. Let's just talk about what is. And I think that's that release and that surrender. There's a great quote by Chogyam Trungpa, and he says, "The warrior's decency is the absence of strategy." And it's a really deep and powerful quote, because I think we grow up and we're always chess players. We're always playing things, and we use our identity as the queen on the chessboard. That's the one that's the most mobile and can open the most things. But when you turn the chessboard over on its head and realize you're just going to be you, and that actually tends to yield the best result anyways. Like, your strategy is actually almost a diminishment of the expression of yourself in its fullness. And yeah, maybe it may close some doors, and maybe you may miss some opportunities, but you may gain some other ones that are even more radical.
Without a doubt. Just by being your authentic self and stop putting on all the masks, as Lewis Howes says, or just pretending to be other people because you think that that's what they want from you, is not allowing yourself to be the true expression of you. Because we're always trying to be something or be someone else, which takes away from our own gifts of what we have to share because we have our own unique viewpoint on the world. So, as I'm shifting gears here, and it is because you have so many different things going on in your life, right? So best-selling author, you have Onnit Academy, you have the fashion line, you have all the things going on. One of the things that I find most fascinating is routines. So it's like, well, we all have 24 hours in the day. How does someone do all the things that they do? How do they prioritize? And I don't know about you, but one of the things for me is that I have to get my mornings right. So if I don't get my own quiet time in the morning, then I'm no good for everyone else and everyone else's demands during the day. So I've talked about my morning routine countless times on my show, but what struck me in your book, Own the Day, Own Your Life, is you have your morning routine, and maybe it varies from day to day, but it's always about the water, the light, and the movement. And I love that because I've never put it that way, but it's absolutely what I do in my morning as well. So tell me your morning routine and how that water, light, movement focuses into it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it is, it's really important how you start any enterprise and with what intention you start it. Because it's not only the practices you do, but it's the willingness to do those things for you, even when you are a little tired. That just sets your framework to be like, oh, there's a little bit of resistance. It's called my fatigue. It's called I'm lazy and I'm in my pajamas and I'm running late because to push through that and actually go through the routine is the first win. And then the routine itself should add value on top of that too. So it's like a double win when you do this. So the first one is, we lose over 1 pound of water overnight, depending on what climate we're in, because the water vapors expelling from our body are more moisture rich than the water that's coming into our body, which is drier. So we're losing it. Sometimes we sweat in the sheets too. So that can add some, but we're losing water weight. And that can lead to, a mild dehydration in the morning. And so many people just reach for that black coffee, caffeine being hydrated, and then their mouth might go from being parched, but their body isn't actually hydrated. And the effects of mild dehydration are well documented and ugly. So the first thing I do is take 12 to 16 ounces of water, mix it with sea salt. I prefer Himalayan sea salt, but any sea salt will do because sea salt has naturally at least over 60 different trace minerals. And these trace minerals are I liken it to like stocking the shelves at Home Depot. So when the body needs to make a repair and make things go, it's got all the stuff. So it doesn't have to use the duct tape and the caulk gun for everything, Gives you that mineral load, all those electrolytes with the water, so you can start the hydration process off on the right foot. So that's the very first thing.
That's the water framework. And you start pretty quickly from when you wake up to grab that first glass of water.
Yep, that's it.
Do you do any lemon? Do any lime in it?
Yeah, so I add a little lemon. I think lemon has some great properties in it as well. A little bit of vitamins, a little bit of micronutrient that's going to help get things moving. And it also helps the taste, especially with the salt. The salt on its own, it just tastes like salt water, but salty lemon water, ooh, that's like a refreshing cooler at that point. You can also mix apple cider vinegar in there too. There's a couple different variations on that. We have an electrolyte drink mix that I use that has a higher quotient of magnesium, potassium, and calcium than just the sea salt. And I'll mix that with a little sea salt. So I have some variations on that. Nice. But basically, water, hydration, micronutrients, get that moving first. And then you got to worry about your circadian rhythm. And that's something that we get really screwed up. I mean, in the wild, all animals are very adept to following the circadian rhythm where they're active at the time where they're supposed to be active and dormant where the time where they are, and it follows the sun. But humans, we have so much artificial light and we have so blackout curtains, and we can basically manipulate the way that light interferes and interacts with our body in a lot of different ways. And blue lights, the lights that come from TVs and phones, will actually stop your melatonin production. I'm sure your audience probably knows a lot of this. And then the presence of these lights will actually signal the body through the circadian rhythm to wake up. So I try to expose myself to as much light as I can across as much of my body as I can, because there's actually photoreceptors in places that we wouldn't even imagine. Like one of the things I recommend is a Valky human charger, which goes in your inner ear, because there's photoreceptors in your ear. It's not just through your eyeballs that you have these photoreceptors that signal the awakening aspect of the circadian rhythm. And then movement is another great one. These are, some of the classic, I think they're called Zeitgebers. It's what Ben Greenfield calls them. And I read the article about it. But these are one of the big signals that, okay, now it's time to wake up and do things. So you start moving around. That could be yoga. That could be jumping on a trampoline. That could be, just doing a few push-ups. That could be just dancing, shadow boxing, like whatever you want to do. movement, light, and water, and you're awake already. And then you can choose, okay, now when do I want my coffee? And for me today, it was after lunch at, about, because we had this podcast coming up. I had lunch at 12:15. So I was like, all right, I'm going to start my coffee around 1. And perfect, because, I've already got some food in my belly, so it's not going to give me that sour stomach that coffee does. And I get to enjoy it now, but I didn't need it to get me out of bed and just get me to the office and then start that, hormone, adrenaline trigger right off the bat. I got to save it for when it was going to be the most useful for me.
That's actually a really good point too. It's the people that need the coffee to get themselves going that should be the ones that shouldn't be drinking the coffee. So we need to find out through this, we call it just a dysfunctional diphasic rhythm, is like a lot of people, they have low cortisol in the morning and their cortisol starts to rise towards the end of the day. So they have the tired in the morning and the wired at night. Well, we do get this, and a lot of people feel, well, oh, I'm a night owl and all of these things. Well, yes, a lot of people enjoy staying up later, and you can actually run their labs, and you can see they have higher cortisol at night. But it's still dysfunctional, just like you said. If you were to take your one-person tent into Patagonia, and you were to hang out there for 3 weeks, and you would try to stay asleep when that sun is rising as it's coming up, good luck.
Good luck.
And also at night, like you don't want to be hanging out in the wild as a human without that nocturnal vision at night. So like you're going to bed in a safe spot. So it's one of those things is that we need to be able to get back into those rhythms. That's really what it's all about. One of the other things that goes right along with this topic is you have something called controlled recovery period. Is that correct? CRPs?
Yep.
And it's funny because we have different terminology, but yet when you look at these facets that people are talking about health, they're talking about them in different ways. And that's why I want to bring more people onto the show, because your cues are different than my cues.
Yep.
And so, I call them anchors during the day, and I call them parasympathetic nervous system anchors, which just simply means you turn off the fight or flight and you get into more of a relaxed state. One of the ways that I have one in the morning when I wake up, I have one at lunch, I have a quiet lunch, and I go for a walk and I put on binaural beats, and everybody knows I talk about that all the time. And then I have one on the walk home. It means that like by the time I get in my door, I need to switch off work. And it has to happen pretty quick.
Yep. Because
I have 2 young girls, 4 and 6 years old, and they don't care what happened during the day. They want me to be totally present. Obviously, same with my wife as well. So those are my anchors that I create. I do certain things, whether it be just turn on a funny podcast, like something out of the ordinary, or I put on binaural beats. That's one of my favorite ones to do it. You have your own called controlled recovery periods where you might talk about napping. Like what are some of those things that you use or that you would recommend to others?
Sleep has been a challenge for me. Sleep has been a challenge for me for a long time. And I think part of the problem is that there's a lot of pressure on sleeping just your overnight period. How much sleep did you get last night, right? Like it's all about how much sleep you got in that one block. But all across the world, there's examples of biphasic sleepers, whether it's the siesta that they do in Spain, and there's different napping protocols in countries like Ethiopia and different countries all over the world. And also, if you look back to indigenous records, there's natural lulls in your circadian rhythm throughout the day where it makes it easier to nap. And a lot of cultures practice those, and I think for me, understanding that we don't have to have this monophasic sleep model, and that's the only time you get to rest, we can expand that. And Nick Littlehale did a great job in his book called Sleep, and he worked with a lot of the top athletes, Manchester United he was working with, and some of the top athletes in the world. And he's like, all right, screw how much sleep you get in a night. We're going to talk about how much sleep you get in a week. And your goal should be 30 to 35 sleep cycles in a whole week, because you can catch up on sleep. Like talk to a Navy SEAL who's been awake for 3 days. Like what happens when they get back to a safe place at the base? They'll sleep for 24 hours. Like, so this idea that you can't catch up on sleep isn't true. Like we do catch up on sleep over time. It isn't based on one night. So what he talks about and what he worked on with his athletes is because they're traveling, they play a game, they hop on the team plane, they're excited. It's hard to come down from scoring a game-winning goal while several million people are watching. Good luck sleeping after that. It's hard enough when I do a speech on stage to 200 people, let alone like kick a goal in front of 200 million or whatever the fan base is, right? So he talks about counting those per week. And he says a sleep cycle, you can wear a ring like I'm wearing, like the Oura ring, which will help you track it more regularly, but it's roughly a 90-minute period, and that'll take you through the whole sleep cycle. And so you count how many you get in a night. So let's say if you slept 6 solid hours, well, that might be about 4. And then if your target's 35 in a week, you need to try to get 5 in a day. So he says you have a couple options. During that day, you could take a full sleep cycle nap, where it's one of those drooly, I'm asleep for a whole cycle, over an hour to close to an hour and a half. Those ones where you wake up like, whoa, I just teleported out of space-time here for a little while. And those are great, but kind of hard to come by, So what he also recommends is a controlled recovery period. And that's where you put on binaural beats. And those are about 30 minutes. And you can kind of fall asleep, but at least feel your brainwave state change. And that's why I like the binaural beats. It's because I can actually feel it happen. I can start to feel my body fall asleep and the parasympathetic activity start to come on. Maybe it's the gurgling in my stomach. Maybe it's the fact that it feels like I couldn't even move my fingers if I wanted, but even though my brain's awake, it's kind of like that feeling in Shavasana. That's why they say if you're in a deep Shavasana after yoga, they'll be like, okay, now wiggle your toes. Why do they say that? I don't know, because your body's like asleep, even though your mind is awake. And It's about the only thing you can do is wiggle your toes first. Okay, bring consciousness back through my body. And he counts that as a sleep cycle. So if you get that 6 hours of sleep and then you get a good 30-minute controlled recovery period, you got your 5 cycles for that day, and then you're on track for your 35 during a week. And I found that absolutely to be true. And there's great research on naps. Naps have been shown to be actually more effective in alertness and productivity than more overnight sleep or even another cup of coffee. Like, naps are great. The science is in. And these controlled recovery periods act as these naps and can give you a point on your sleep score. I don't know what I would do without them, to be honest.
How regularly do you try to get your naps in?
Every day I try, and it just depends on the schedule. Sometimes you got those, my Google Calendar just looks like a block of Legos that have all been snapped together, and it's like, well, today's not the day, but I'll catch up on another day. Maybe I'll get a full 7.5, 8 hours of sleep, and those are kind of a little bit lucky nights, and I'll take a controlled recovery period nap, so I'll pick up 6 in a day. Woo, I'm flying if I pick up 6 in a day. And the truth is, you're just more effective when you're rested. I'm more effective in the boardroom, in the bedroom, in the weight room, everywhere I want to go. I'm more effective. So the work that would normally take me 2 hours might take me 45 minutes, So being rested is not something that kills productivity, it actually helps it, So if you use a nap correctly, it's not you being lazy, it's you being productive.
I agree. And one of the things is in most of the European cultures or a lot of the older cultures, you will take that nap, you will take that siesta after lunch.
Yep.
And that's one of the most incredible things we can do because a lot of people sit at their desk and have lunch. So you never actually shift in the parasympathetic, which means the food just stays in your stomach longer. It starts to ferment. It causes bloating, causes gas. You can't break it all down as well. So that's going to make you even more fatigued. So, our idea is that if you're going to have that good lunch or good sized lunch, is that you give yourself a little bit of time to rest, is that you just don't try to power through your lunch. It's one of those things that will drastically cut down on your energy for the rest of the day. But it's also cumulative, like you just said. Okay, no big deal if you do that every once in a while, because it's going to happen to all of us. But if you do that over months and those months become years, then we start to say, okay, my energy is lower, my libido is lower, my zest and vitality for life is lower. You don't want to do things. You're just kind of already stuck there. The problem is that a lot of people get there and then it's like, oh, now I have to start, doing this. Now I have to do that. So for me, maybe you can't take a nap at work, or maybe you can go out to your car if you're in an office building, or maybe you can do the walk that I do. A parasympathetic walk means that you are just focusing on your breath, it's basically, I call it a walking meditation.
Yeah.
And you put on the binaural beats, so you're not thinking about anything in particular. And you're just going out for 20 minutes. You're going out for 30 minutes. It helps with the digestion of your food, helps with a postprandial glucose-based level, so you're not getting that big spike. So I couldn't be a bigger advocate. And, I think part of it is one of the ways that people don't get well and they don't live their best life is that they get too rigid, right? So I have to travel quite a bit. And if I was always as rigid, if I don't get that, I'm going to start to get sick again or whatever it might be, you start to cause the own internal sickness in yourself. Your psychology literally affects your physiology. So I think by having the option saying, this is an overnight flight, I might get 5 hours. Okay, but can I get in that 90-minute drooling nap like you just talked about?
Takes so much pressure off.
Right, exactly.
And that pressure will kill you because when you start counting the hours and freaking out, it's just going to make it even harder to sleep. It's just going to spike cortisol more because you're actually in fight or flight because you think there's a threat that's coming. And that threat is every tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock of the seconds that you aren't sleeping. It's like someone stalking you like a tiger coming through your clock, breathing down your throat,
and
right?
It's you. You're the one stalking yourself.
You're the one stalking yourself.
Yeah.
But if you're like, okay, whatever, cool. Okay, man, maybe it's 2 sleep cycles today, 3 hours of sleep. Well, that sucks. I'm going to have my work cut out for me. And I've had those nights. And I've done 2 naps or 2 controlled recovery periods that brought me to 4. And by the end of the second one, I don't feel as nearly as devastated. I feel like, okay, yeah, today, not optimal. I would prefer to sleep more, but I feel okay, and I can like make it through this day. And that's huge. It's huge to just take that pressure off and not freak yourself out.
One of my favorite quotes, and I say it quite often, but an Ayurvedic saying is that the key to immortality is infinite flexibility. So meaning like, okay, today was not a good day. That doesn't mean tomorrow's not going to be.
Right.
Tonight, I didn't get a whole lot of sleep, but that doesn't mean it's going to ruin my whole day. I've gone in the past without nights of sleep. I was okay then. I'll be okay now. So
I'm gone without sleep for nights in the past, and I don't even remember them now because that's how non-important they were.
That's right.
You know what I mean? Like,
and I think we can use that in any part of our life. Right? We're talking about sleep right now, but it's like, well, an argument or whatever, you feel it's the end of the world while it's going on.
How many Armageddons have you all lived? I mean, I've probably lived 100 personal Armageddons where everything was crashing down. It was all ruined. My whole physiology had accepted complete dissolution, and it never happened. Right. Here I am on a podcast, smiling. Like,
that's right.
It's funny. It's funny how we'll always give credence to that next thing that we're worried about and blow it up into this hyperbolic cataclysm when it's not.
No, and there will always be a next thing.
There'll always be a next thing.
So one of the things that you seem to be on is this, it's not my saying, I think, is it Jesse Eitzler, I think is his name, was one of the first person I heard saying, building a life resume. It's like you're on this journey in life that you understand at a young age that, okay, like I'm doing these things, but really what am I trying to achieve? And you're trying to achieve awareness, self-awareness and exploration and seeing how far you can take this thing we called life. Have you mapped it out? Have you thought about that? Or is this just something you explore as new interests come along?
What's interesting is that my focus my whole life has been, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And, that's become more clear what I want to do. Well, I wanted to start on it and I wanted to write books and I wanted to get my philosophy out in the world and explain some of the experiences I've had in the spiritual realm and talk about all these things. So those are all things that I want to do. But really, I understand now that more important than what I do is who I'm able to become, like what I'm able to be. And the rest will follow naturally from that. So, and I wouldn't say that I've completely surrendered to that shift, because I still care a lot about what I do. And I'm sure I always will. But, it's similarly to like, I let Whitney, my fiance, go. I let the attachment to that go and then was able to reclaim our relationship and all the things that we do in an even better way, even more robust way. And I think for me, by surrendering all of the things that I do, all of the accomplishments with quotes that I have and all of these outward expressions, if I can really let those go and focus on being the best version of myself that I can possibly be, then I can reclaim all of these external things in a higher way. So I'm really looking to just become, the very best expression of myself possible.
Do you know what that looks like or what that feels like? Because maybe you can't put it into words, but what does that mean for you?
Okay.
Because we all have our own, what we're trying to become.
Yeah. I think that I've always had this kind of a little bit of a warrior mentality towards all the doing, right? So my armor and sword are well worn, and I have hardly taken them off. And I have for dedicated, intentional periods. But I'm tilted towards battle. My whole body actually leans forward. Even my neck tilts forward. Like my physiology has adapted to my psychology, which is, what is the next challenge? What is the next dragon to slay? Is my armor tight? Have I sewn up my chainmail? Is my sword sharp? Are the nicks ironed out? Like, am I ready for the next battle?
Something to conquer.
Something to conquer. Yeah. Something to conquer. And I mean, a lot of people like put that on a pedestal, like, oh wow, here I am conquering again. Here I am. And I even went to a graveyard in Argentina. And it was really funny. It was like this a bunch of mausoleums and a bunch of different crypts and things. And it was all the important people from Argentina's past in this cemetery. And it was funny because there'd be all these generals in their army uniforms, and it would be carvings. And in the carvings, they'd have angels like weeping tears as they're holding with arms on their waist, and this thing like this just celebrating, like he was a general and he never took his uniform off. And that is how he'll be remembered. And that's why the angels weep for his loss, for all the people he killed. And you're like, okay, maybe not, but we do that anyways. Like the people, those business people who've never rested, never slept, he only sleeps 4 hours a week. And we use that as a badge of honor and conquered all of these things externally, made $1 billion. Wow. So we're taught this thing. And I think I've adopted a lot of that. And I've had a sense of balance too. And I've known that, but ultimately I want to embrace like enjoyment of the process and an enjoyment of the path where I don't always have the sword in my hand and I'm not wearing the armor. I'm still going intentionally where I want to go, but it's more of that Wu Wei, kind of Absolutely. Peaceful, gentle road, which I don't think will slow down my accomplishments at all. I think it's another special forces saying slow is smooth and smooth is fast. You know what I mean? Like we think that fast is fast. No, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Like you watch them pull their guns. It's not like you see in the West, right? I think Tim Kennedy has something up. He just posted on Instagram. Watch how he pulls his gun from his holster. It's so smooth. It's not the fastest thing you've ever seen, but he is going to pull and not fumble and hit his target every single time. And that's fast, rather than like you're Billy the Kid.
Twice.
Yeah, exactly. Like Billy the Kid style. Like, that's not how it works. And that's the same with life. Like slow down a little bit, keep it smooth, smile more along the way. And I'm actually going to accomplish even more than jack your cortisol, go super fast, make some mistakes on the road, patch those up, apologize for them and keep on going. Like It's just a different mentality that I want to bring to the second half of my life. And I was laughing when I was in Patagonia and I had some really ecstatic, like happy moments. I was like, man, you know what? When people talk about me, I want them to say he enjoyed the second half of his life the most of anyone. That's great. That's what I want, like my legacy to read. Yeah. That's like that. If that's my epitaph, great. Like he enjoyed the second half of his life the most, okay, great.
Absolutely. And I mean, but I don't know if we chatted about this, but don't you think a lot of that comes from really going through a lot of the hardships earlier in life and recognizing them and being self-aware? Because everybody goes through them, but most people don't want to struggle with it. They don't, when those thoughts come up, they just push them back down. But if you allow yourself to really go in there, talk with some of those demons and explore it and just say like, well, why am I feeling this way? What does it bring up? What does it conjure up? It does allow you, I believe, to eventually, now when you're going through it, it can be painful, right? But it eventually allows you to then be more playful with life. That's what I found, like without a doubt. And part of it is like, okay, like you're going to go in no matter what, because like it's part of who you are. It's part of the DNA is like, you will continue to accomplish and conquer whatever you want to call it, but you'll do it in a different light with a different feeling about you. But also there's no rush, right? Because you know that, okay, so you wrote this book, like, all right, let me get started on the next one. Like it's not going anywhere. Once you finish this, you're just going to finish the next one. If you accomplish that, there's just going to be the next one. So it's like, well, since it's never ending, why don't I just take my time?
Exactly.
That's how I look.
That's the beauty. And I know when I'm being in that state because I'm playing and laughing. Like it could be a meeting here with all the executives and we're talking about serious stuff. When I'm in the right state of mind, I'll crack a joke and people will laugh, or I'll have a big smile on my face and make a compliment openly and play. And like, you're just more playful. It could be in relationship, whatever. When I'm in that kind of playful state, not only has everything worked better, but it's just more fun across the board. And so that's a good signal for me. Like when I'm playful, I know that my mental pieces are in the right array. And when I'm not playful, I'm for sure taking things way too seriously. And I think a lot of that is too, like you start to get better at tracking yourself. You start to get better at tracking like, well, why am I so somber right now? What is it that's going on? And it's always generally some fear that you haven't excavated. and everybody has a different response. Like I have a good friend who I can tell when she's going through something because she's a little less present and not even going through something. I can tell when there's something submerged, and I've known her long enough. So I can tell when something's submerged and she gets distractible. So in conversations, even if it's 3 people in the conversation, it's awkward to bring out her phone, she still will, because she needs that extra distraction. She's kind of running from something that's submerged.
She has a tell.
She has a tell. She has a tell. And we all have tells. Yep. But you have to have the awareness to be like, oh. So then I came to her recently, and I'm getting this awareness. I'm getting this awareness of myself. I know my tells. I just sit in a somber, worst case scenario place and just embrace the pain of this hypothetical cataclysm that I've created. And I sit in sadness. So I don't run and distract, but I will marinate and ruminate in the filth, of my own mental creation. That's my way. So that's my tell. So if you see me sitting around ruminating, I'm going through something and whatever, I'm working on that. But for her, it's this kind of aversion, this running thing. So I told her the other day, I was like, you got something. And I made it a metaphor. I was like, feels about 3 feet deep, and it's probably a fear. What do you got going on? And she's like, oh, wow, fear, 3 feet deep. And she was able to look at it and then bring it out. And I actually got a message 2 days later. It's like, wow, thank you so much for helping me bring light to that and bring it out. And I've been able to, once that was out, she's got so much more energy, because it takes energy to depress those things. Absolutely. It takes energy to run from those things, and it prevents your playfulness. I could just hear it in her voice. I could see it in her actions or scrolling of the feeds in her. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, well, there's something there. And, using that metaphor of about 3 feet, not too buried. We're not talking, you got to go 100 feet and get the excavation tools and call someone who can dig a pipeline. No, it's 3 feet, just a little bit of light and some light tools. And, you'll get to it. You just have to bring the awareness to it. And I think that's the case with all of us. And the longer we've been ignoring things, perhaps the deeper it's gone, the more layers we've piled on. And maybe we do need some tools. Maybe we need some of those tools like MDMA or psilocybin, these tools that are coming legal and going through phase 2 clinical trials, because stuff is buried and it doesn't feel safe to go into those dark places anymore. Maybe we do need tools, or great guided therapy, or just some of the other practices like flotation or nature or meditation or yoga. We need something a little deeper to drive us to that. But sometimes it's just awareness. And the more practice you have at it, the easier it'll get.
And even just allowing yourself, giving yourself the permission to feel those feelings and not bury them. And maybe you can't feel them all at once because it would be too overwhelming, because you're just starting. But if you can feel them a little bit, you work with it, you sit with it, just like you were talking about, and then you can revisit it again. And as you're able to, because this is challenging work for a lot of people, I can just tell you that it's absolutely worth it. It's worth going through that, because I don't believe that people are ever going to become as good as they can be and reach their full potential, but really their passion for life, until they've worked through a lot of these things, because that's what they need to go through, right? So we each have our own journey that we're on, but we need to go through those obstacles. So I think when you get to a certain point in your life, you actually start to seek those obstacles. Yeah. You start to seek becoming a little bit uncomfortable. And you did that with your journey down to Patagonia. But what about right now? For 2019, have you set a goal for yourself that's something that you're not the best at right now, but you want to try to either create mastery, or it's just uncomfortable and you want to put yourself through that?
I feel like I've dealt with the bullet hole sized, trauma and wounds that I've needed to. So it's like I'm on a horse, I have my lance, I have my magical sword, I'm full armored, I'm ready for a big challenge. And I'm looking around, and it's really small game territory now. There's little things that are scratching my horse, there's brambles that are giving me cuts, there's poison ivy that's giving me a rash, there's all of these little things that I'm not applying the same wisdom to these bigger things. But collectively, when you got a rash, a thorn in your foot, and you're too hot and you got sniffles in your nose, collectively that's almost adds up to the same amount of suffering anyways, right?
Yes, still suffering.
And so I think, to me, a big part of what I'm really looking at now is releasing my attachment to a lot of and handling a lot of the medium to low grade issues a lot better. And so that could be, like this is cedar season in Austin and I get bad allergies, right? So it's an opportunity every day for me to not be like in resistance to the actuality that my nose is going to run. You probably hear it in my voice. Like my nose is stuffed and going to run while I'm here. And it's either that's going to piss me off all day or I'm going to like accept it. It's not like a devastating thing like my car crash, this is allergies, like it's not.
It's what's here right now.
It's what's here right now.
Absolutely.
And combine that with whatever else. So I think that's a big part of it. And there's other little things too, like the desire to, please people in certain ways. That could be like a friend that really wants to see me, but I'm really tired and I need to take a night alone. And I think there was a compulsion, and it wasn't too bad, but there was a compulsion like, okay, I'll do that. I'll show up. I know, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I'll do this. Okay, you're in town. All right, well, I'll take you out to dinner because you're not in town. And collectively, it can become a little much. And it comes from my just not being able to prioritize my own needs in accord with theirs and understand that if I express my sentiments honestly and with love, like they'll support that too. Mm-hmm. So little opportunities to get a little better at that, get a little better at handling my physical wellness, get a little better at handling job stress and work stress and my own expectations around that. So it's just kind of, this year is almost like a cleanup year, where I'm cleaning up a lot of the different pieces. And then I think when I'm able to do that, I'll take on another big task like writing my next book or something along those lines.
I think that's great. So we've been talking a lot about mind. We've been talking about transformation. We've been talking about more self-awareness. And I love talking about these topics. I mean, we literally try to add a little bit more every week because, there's one of those famous sayings that motivation is a lot like brushing your teeth. It should be done daily, right?
Yeah,
you need to keep yourself going because every day, if you're at the Buddhist mentalities, it's a little bit of a struggle, right? Where we're all here, we all need to work together and figure out our own path. So what's some concrete advice, whether it's from your book, Own the Day, Own Your Life, or from your own life that you can say like, hey, if you're a beginner or intermediate level, here's where I would start. This is what I would do, or something actionable someone can take from today's show so that it does, fall along the lines of your book. It's like, yes, a lot of this is mindset, but after you've started to think the thoughts, you become more self-aware, you start to feel the feelings, eventually we need to take action. And action is the way that we're going to be able to change our life.
I think really one of the attributes that defines, a person as far as what they're capable of doing and how well they'll progress, it's courage. Courage is the virtue that we need. And I define courage as action, not retraction in the face of fear. And courage is something that you practice. It's not something you're just born with. Like, oh, wow, out came the womb, the courageous one. It's like you practice courage and you practice courage in a lot of daily things because courage is the thing that's going to allow you to go into the shadows of your psyche and face your unconscious challenges. Courage is the thing that's going to allow you to have that conversation that's uncomfortable with your parents or the conversation that's uncomfortable with your spouse or express your voice or share that. All of it comes down to courage. And when you get better at having courage, which is again, action, not retraction in the face of fear. So that's the thing that I think we need to practice. And I think that one of the best ways and healthiest ways to practice courage is to use the cold as your ally. And it's something that Wim Hof talks about a lot. And because the cold is something that's really beneficial actually to the body. It's a hormetic stressor. It has a variety of different benefits to inflammation, to stress reduction, to cold shock proteins, to a variety of different things. Short-term cold immersion, of course, if you're healthy and able to withstand a hormetic stress, just like working out is hormetic stress or everything. But there's a lot of emotions attached to the cold because there's this sensation that feels like pain, but it's not pain because it's actually helping the body. And eventually it does feel good. It feels good afterwards. But that practice of turning that shower nozzle all the way cold, it takes courage. It takes action, not retraction, in the face of fear of the cold, fear of that uncomfortability. And, then a cold plunge is another level of that. And so you start to practice, just pick something simple like that and know that, all right, the cold is going to benefit me. I will feel better. I'm going to yield these physical results. But really the most important thing is I'm practicing courage. And if I can practice courage in this, then I can practice courage somewhere else. And so that would be my advice on where to start. And you can start it in your shower. Have a nice warm shower and then just intentionally. And it's not only that you do it, it's like how you do it. Do you do it all scared and shivery and complaining, or do you do it like a hero? Just literally take the nozzle, turn it with a little smile, and let the cold wash over you. Maybe that'll take a little while, but that's the ultimate level of courage. Not like, I'm going to move out and then I'm going to move in. I'm going to dip my toes in and then I'm not. Like, go smooth, steady into it and face that fear. And that's a great practice to have, because that can apply to everything universally.
Yeah, without a doubt. I like that advice. And, and I think when people start to, just like you just said right there, the last part was perfect. It's how you approach it, because you can actually improve your courage by first mentally walking yourself through it.
Yep.
How you're going to grab that nozzle, whatever it might be, and you're going to go back to your breath.
Yeah.
And if you can begin to relax your body and you don't get yourself heightened ahead of time, because a lot of times, just like you said, like, it's a stressor. It takes courage to do something you don't want to do or you would not typically do. Well, you're getting yourself heightened because you're making more of a to-do about it than it really is.
Yeah.
So if you just relax your own nervous system, your own neurology, you're going to be able to probably accomplish it a lot easier as well.
No
but
doubt.
like you said, let that be the first thing and build off of all those small wins. People think they take down the biggest challenges first. That's probably not the best thing to do.
Yeah.
Start with what you can do that's a little above where you're willing to probably go, accomplish that, work on the next thing. It's small wins.
Yeah.
Small wins over time accumulates quite a life resume, I think, as well.
And athletes know that. I work with a lot of fighters, and when we do hear it on it, like, imagine if your very first fight before you even sparred was in the UFC, in the octagon under the lights. You got Bruce Buffer and Joe Rogan coming to interview you afterwards. Good luck having that be your first fight. It's hard enough if you've been through all the sparring rounds and been through the amateur circuit, even to go on that stage. But we'll pick our UFC fight first. No, that's not the way to go. That's not courage. That's just foolishness. Like, practice the courage in the small ways so that you know that you can trust yourself, and then you'll be able to trust yourself in the bigger stuff.
Because if you did take that big fight in your example first, you probably would never fight again.
Yeah, totally. Because it would be devastating.
You just went after the biggest one first, and you weren't ready yet. You hadn't gone through those smaller obstacles. So that's
and
excellent.
people do that working out all the time too. Someone will never have worked out at all. They'll get some crazy trainer, or they'll go to a full CrossFit class, and they'll be like trying to just kill a barbell session, and they're sore for 2 weeks, and they're like, I can't do this anymore. People do it on vacation when they try to go get sun. Like, I haven't been in sun in 3 months. I'm going to sit out there and roast my white skin till I'm a lobster, and I can't go out in the sun the whole rest of the trip.
Right. You ruined your vacation.
You ruined your vacation. Congratulations. You ruined your vacation. You just binged on that thing. It's just like, take your time.
There are points between A and Z.
Exactly.
It's nice to be able to walk that road.
Exactly.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on today.
Yeah,
really
man.
great. I know that my community is going to get a lot out of your wisdom and words and experience. That's what it's all about. I want to get the point across that everyone can enjoy all of these different journeys that they're on, but there's going to be the ups and the downs, and it's to learn from it, to really have that self-awareness. Your book, Own the Day, Own Your Life, talks a lot about that. And I would say it's also a how-to manual. It's not just the wisdom in there that you've accumulated, but it's like, okay, but here's how you can put it into action. There's diagrams of exercises, even using something that I enjoy, and I talk about the still mace. It's like, well, why would I ever use a steel mace? Well, there's no need to use a steel mace, but it's one more thing that you can try to conquer, that you can enjoy, that you can bring into your exercise. Because if you've been exercising for a while, or you've been doing anything for a while, it's nice to spice things up. It's nice to try different things. So, great book that I do recommend. Onnit here in Austin. Of course, if you're local or nearby, stop by. The Onnit brand, nutrition brand as well. But tell us what else you have going on, because I know you have a bunch of things going on. What else can we highlight here today?
Yeah, I think whatever I'm going through is just something that I'm going to put out, as I kind of said earlier. So I'm always something who's looking to step into the next level and next possibility of who I am and expressing my challenges. And so, if you want to follow me on Instagram at Aubrey Marcus. That's one of my most active platforms. I have a blog that has a lot of different articles and things, aubreymarcus.com. And, again, if you're in Austin, you like yoga, we have Black Swan Yoga. That's our studio that's really killing it, offering some great yoga practices. But that's really it. There's not too much else kind of coming on through the works at this moment. So just kind of keep in touch. And thanks for listening. Yeah,
that's great.
Always love being able to reach new people and hopefully convey a message that's helpful.
No doubt about it. Thank you again. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much for just tuning into the show, and you are not going to believe it. We have one of our best offers to date going on over at equilibriumnutrition.com right now. I just reformulated our activated B complex formula. What did I do? Well, I took the same great formula and I added 2 more B vitamins that almost no one knows about. Well, PABA, vitamin B10, and inositol, vitamin B8, used to be known as part of the B vitamin family. And the reason is they help with stress. They help with the nervous system. They help with neurological-based functions. They help with fat metabolism. They help to increase energy. They help to balance female hormones. So these, I really believe, are crucial. They need to be in everyone's everyday nutrition. And I want to make sure that as a fail-safe, people are getting those through a good quality, functional medicine-based formula. So I went back, I reformulated it, and the great news is this. Whenever we come out with a new formula, I like to either offer it at a better price, or I like to, if ever possible, give you a bottle to try. So right now, for all orders over $99, we are giving away our brand new activated B complex. It was already one of our top products in our community, and right now we've improved it, we've made it better. I'm excited to be able to give this to you, and this is a limited edition run. Our manufacturer, believe it or not, doubled the amount of capsules. Not good for us, but good for you. It's 120 capsules per bottle. It's supposed to be 60 capsules. These things sometimes happen. We are still giving away the bottles. I'm still committed to getting you this product. I know you're going to love it. So check it out right now at equilibriumnutrition.com. This is an absolutely limited edition. They're going to go back to 60 capsules in the future. A limited edition run. You can get your free bottle while supplies last for all purchases over $99. This is worldwide at equilibriumnutrition.com. And I will talk more about the inositol and the PABA that I've added to the product on our Friday review. Take care, everyone. I hope you enjoy this brand new formula.